Charles Bronson and Bruce Lee stand across from each other at a crowded Hollywood party, when a drunk producer shouts, $500 says the Chinese kid can't last 30 seconds with a real American fighter. What happens next doesn't start a fight between two martial artists. It starts a friendship that teaches everyone watching what real strength actually looks like. Hollywood, California, September 1960. Saturday night, 9 p.m. A lavish party at producer Jack Warner's Bel Air mansion. The kind of gathering where studio executives mix with rising stars, where deals get made over cocktails, where careers can be launched or destroyed with a single conversation. Crystal chandeliers hang from vaulted ceilings. Waiters in white jackets carry silver trays of champagne. The air buzzes with the particular energy of people who make dreams into money. Charles Bronson stands near the bar, nursing a whiskey and watching the crowd. At 39 years old, he's still grinding through supporting roles, still waiting for his breakthrough, still being told he's too ethnic, too ugly, too real for leading man parts. Tonight he's here because his agent insists on networking, on being seen, on playing the Hollywood game he's never quite mastered. Across the room, Bruce Lee demonstrates martial arts techniques to a small gathering of fascinated guests. He's 20 years old, newly arrived from Hong Kong, teaching kung fu to Hollywood's elite while auditioning for any role that might showcase his skills. Most people here see him as an exotic curiosity, a Chinese kid doing parlor tricks for wealthy Americans who think martial arts is just dancing with kicks. But Charles sees something different. He recognizes the focus in Bruce's eyes, the precision in his movements, the quiet confidence that comes from understanding real violence. This isn't performance art. This is functional skill demonstrated by someone who knows the difference. The party's host, producer Harvey Goldman, has been drinking heavily and holding court near the pool, telling war stories and making increasingly loud pronouncements about toughness and authenticity in Hollywood. Goldman made his fortune producing war movies without ever seeing combat, action films starring men who've never thrown a real punch. The problem with Hollywood today, Goldman declares to his circle of sycophants, is we're losing our edge. Too many pretty boys, not enough real men, not enough authentic American toughness. His voice carries across the party, drawing attention from multiple conversations. People drift toward the spectacle, sensing entertainment brewing. Take that Chinese kid over there, Goldman continues, gesturing at Bruce with his martini glass. Impressive moves, sure. But that's not real fighting. That's dance. Real fighting is what American men do. Raw power. No fancy footwork. Bruce stops his demonstration. The group around him falls silent. Everyone can feel the tension building. The racist undertones in Goldman's words impossible to ignore. And you, Goldman points at Charles now. Bronson, you play tough guys in movies. But are you actually tough, or is it all just good acting? Charles sets down his whiskey, walks slowly toward Goldman's group, his presence changing the energy of the entire party. Conversations stop. All attention focuses on this developing confrontation. Mr. Goldman, Charles says quietly. Are you asking me to fight a 20-year-old kid to prove something to you? Goldman grins, sensing opportunity for entertainment. I'm asking if either of you is actually tough, or if it's all just Hollywood bullshit. Bruce approaches now, moving with that fluid grace that makes him seem to glide across the ground. He stops next to Charles, and for a moment the two men size each other up, east and west. Experience and youth, different approaches to the same understanding of violence. What exactly are you proposing? Bruce asks, his voice carrying just a hint of his Hong Kong accent. Goldman's eyes light up with alcohol and malicious inspiration. I'm proposing we settle this once and for all. $500 says the Chinese kid can't last 30 seconds with a real American fighter. Winner takes all. Loser gets exposed as a fake. The crowd murmurs with anticipation. This is better than any movie premiere, real drama. Real stakes, real men facing off for everyone's entertainment. Charles looks at Bruce. Bruce looks back, two professionals recognizing each other across different backgrounds, different training, different worlds. but the same understanding of what violence actually means. 30 seconds, Bruce asks. 30 seconds, Goldman confirms. Real fighting. No rules. First man down loses. Charles studies Goldman's flushed face, his predatory grin, his obvious enjoyment of the spectacle he's creating. Then he looks at Bruce again, seeing not an opponent, but a fellow warrior being used for someone else's amusement. Mr. Goldman, Charles says, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. You want to know who's tougher? Damn right I do. Charles extends his hand to Bruce, not in challenge, in greeting. Bruce Lee. Charles Bronson. Pleasure to meet you. Bruce stares at the offered hand, understanding immediately what Charles is doing. A smile spreads across his face. He shakes Charles's hand firmly. The pleasure is mine, Mr. Bronson. I've seen your films. You understand what real fighting looks like. Goldman's expression shifts from anticipation to confusion. What the hell are you doing? I said fight each other. Charles turns back to Goldman, still holding Bruce's hand in a firm handshake. You asked who's tougher. Here's your answer. We both are, because we don't need to prove it to anyone. Bruce nods. Real fighters don't fight for entertainment. They fight when there's no other choice. You want to see tough? Charles continues, still addressing Goldman but speaking loud enough for the entire party to hear. Tough is this young man coming to a foreign country with nothing but skill and determination. Tough is learning a new language, a new culture, building a career from zero. Tough is Mr. Bronson working for 15 years in small parts, supporting a family, never giving up on his craft even when everyone tells him he doesn't fit their idea of what a star should look like. Bruce adds, understanding the game now and playing it perfectly. Charles releases Bruce's hand, but continues addressing the crowd. You want to know what's not tough? Drinking too much and trying to start fights between strangers for your own amusement. Goldman's face flushes red with embarrassment and anger. You're both chickens, too scared to find out who's really better. That's when Bruce does something unexpected. He laughs, not mockingly, but with genuine amusement. Mr. Goldman, Bruce says, you think fighting proves who's better? Let me show you something. Bruce picks up an empty champagne glass from a nearby table, holds it up for everyone to see. This glass is beautiful. Crystal. Expensive. Perfectly designed for its purpose. He sets it down gently. But if I smash it against Mr. Bronson's head, what do I prove? That I can break things? That I'm stronger than glass? Charles nods, understanding where Bruce is going with this. You prove you destroyed something valuable for no good reason. Exactly. Bruce continues. Two skilled fighters fighting for entertainment proves nothing except that we're willing to risk injury for someone else's amusement. That's not strength. That's stupidity. Charles adds, real strength is knowing when not to fight. Real toughness is walking away from challenges that serve no purpose except ego. Goldman sputters, trying to regain control of the situation. So you're both admitting you're scared. Charles and Bruce look at each other. Something passes between them. Understanding, respect, the recognition of kindred spirits who've chosen different paths to the same destination. We're not scared, Charles says calmly. We're smart. Tell you what, Bruce says, addressing Goldman directly. You want to see who's tougher. Let's make a different bet. What kind of bet? I bet, Bruce says, that Mr. Bronson and I can become friends, real friends. Not because we fought each other, but because we chose not to. I bet that friendship makes both of us stronger than any fight could. Charles extends his hand again. I'll take that bet. They shake hands again, this time with the crowd watching in fascination. What started as potential violence has transformed into something unexpected, something better. You know what? Charles says to Bruce. I'd like to learn some of what you do. Not to fight you, but to understand your approach. And I'd like to understand your approach, Bruce replies. How you bring authenticity to every role. How you make audiences believe you're really living through what your character experiences. Goldman stares at them, his entertainment ruined, his attempt to create conflict transformed into mutual respect. This is bullshit. You're supposed to fight. Charles turns to Goldman one final time. Mr. Goldman, You asked who's tougher. Here's your answer. The man who turns potential enemies into allies is tougher than the man who turns potential allies into enemies. Bruce nods. Fighting is easy. Any fool can throw a punch. Building something together, that takes real strength. They walk away from Goldman's group together, heading toward a quiet corner where they can actually talk. Behind them, the party buzzes with conversation about what just happened. Some guests are disappointed at the lack of violence. Others are impressed by the display of maturity and wisdom. For the next 2 hours, Charles and Bruce sit in Warner's garden, sharing stories. Charles talks about growing up poor in Pennsylvania, about the years of struggle in Hollywood, about learning to survive in an industry that never quite accepted him. Bruce shares his journey from Hong Kong to America, his dreams of showing the world what martial arts can really be, his frustration with being seen as a curiosity instead of an artist. They discover they have more in common than they initially realized. Both outsiders in Hollywood, both carrying the weight of representing their communities, both determined to succeed through authenticity, rather than compromise. You know, Charles says as the party winds down, Goldman was wrong about one thing. This isn't about East versus West. It's about real versus fake, and you're as real as anyone I've met in this town. Same to you, Bruce replies. When I watch your films, I see someone who understands what it means to survive, that translates across any culture. They exchange contact information, make plans to train together, not to fight each other, but to learn from each other, to share techniques and philosophies and approaches to their respective crafts. Their friendship becomes legendary in Hollywood circles, not because they fought, but because they chose not to. Because they recognized strength in each other and decided to build on it rather than tear it down. Years later, when Bruce becomes a global superstar and Charles becomes the highest paid actor in the world, they remain close friends. They credit that night at Warner's party as the moment they learned that real toughness isn't about proving you're better than someone else. It's about making everyone around you better. Goldman's career peaks and fades. His films are forgotten. His name disappears from industry conversations. But the story of the night he tried to start a fight and accidentally created a friendship becomes part of Hollywood folklore. The lesson of that September night in 1960. The strongest answer to who's tougher is sometimes we both are, and we're both smart enough not to prove it. Real warriors recognize each other, and when they do, they choose to build something together rather than tear each other down. That's what Charles Bronson and Bruce Lee taught a room full of Hollywood elites. Strength multiplied is always greater than strength divided. Their answer surprised everyone, because it proved that the toughest men in the room were tough enough to choose friendship over fighting. And that choice made them both legends.